Thank you for coming and spending your afternoon with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, STN, thank you guys for letting us talk a little bit today. We are going to kind of run through our story here, mostly Jacob, and about kind of his process of learning live, my process of teaching live from at the school level with the budgets that we all deal with as broadcast elective programs, and kind of how to get started if you haven't started anything. And if you are already streaming, or you at least have a studio production facility, maybe how to take that outside of the studio and onto campus events, for whether that's sporting events. Those are the easiest because they're the most available. Pep rallies are a good one. Any of the award ceremonies, depending on certain theater shows, the choir performances. There's a lot of options that you can get out there and do live broadcast and really show off your school and the things that are going on in your district and on your campus. Like I said, we're from Broadcast SIMS, and we'll just highlight that at the end of what's this long culmination of learning live broadcast and trying to find a better way to teach it in a lab setting. And I think that's something that we have come really close to accomplishing, and with everyone's help and y'all's participation, that'd be good as well. So we'll tackle that at the end for just a little bit. Quick little bit about me. I graduated from A&M in 2007. I have worked for Weatherford College, Texas State, and Texas A&M, both either depending on radio or TV for those three universities. For Weatherford College and Texas State, I also did their athletic event production, so in-game events, PA announcing, all the video boards and things like that. I was a professional rodeo announcer for 8 years, and that's what really got me going in live production. And as a rodeo announcer, though the voice is something that you're used to, they're also the ones that do everything else: the music, the fireworks, all the little skits. So it's kind of a one-stop shop that you don't realize. So that was great fun. I've been a PA announcer for high school, college, and some minor league teams. Right now, I'm certified to teach marketing and business classes, journalism, and then in Texas, we call it technology applications, so kind of any of our tech apps classes. And then I've been lucky enough to be brought in here with Jacob and the team to help with this Broadcast SIMS production. So I want to introduce Jacob and let him talk about kind of his journey, tell a little bit about his bio, and then he's going to jump right in and kind of show you his story / our story of starting from nothing and hand-me-downs and to where we ended when he graduated, and how we're moving forward there. So Jacob, I'll let you take it away.
So hi there, as Steven said, my name is Jacob Horchler. 4 years ago now, I was a founding member of the Frisco Sports Network. That was our high school after school program. We broadcasted all the live sports all across the district. We had 10 high schools and all varsity sports, so we kept ourselves busy for sure. I served as president of that program for the 2018-2019 school year, my senior year. I'm now currently attending Oklahoma State University, where I'm studying to be a sports media major. While there, I've actually managed to find work at the in-house production firm, Orange Power Studios. So that was something where all that high school experience really came into hand, and I was able to get a job in October of my freshman year of college, and it's been great. I'm still working there. Well, not right now that we're not having any sports, but hopefully I'll be working there again in the fall. And as Steve mentioned, I'm also co-founder of Broadcast SIMS. So why don't we get into sort of our story now of how the Frisco Sports Network sort of came to be back in, I guess this was 2016. So it really—
Jacob, if you don't mind, just before you begin, I just want to let everybody know that I'm sure that people are going to have questions. So the format for today is that you're going to go through your session, then save all your questions. If you do have a question, if anybody's here and has a question later on, we're going to get to those questions. So there will be time afterwards. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Jacob.
No, you're fine. So like I said, we sort of started as an after-school program. We just had a lot of kids that loved sports and wanted the best seat in the house to watch the baseball games or Friday night football. So it really sort of started, we just asked for donations. You know, your parents had a bag of cables in the garage that they just wanted to get rid of, we would take it. You know, the home video camera your parents bought 10 years ago and never used, we use those. So this is sort of, this picture right here is one of those pictures. We had gotten all this equipment and we were just trying to put it together and figure out what worked. You know, we took the audio board out of the football stadium, out of the small studio that was in there. The headsets are gaming headsets that some kid wasn't using anymore. The tripods, you know, they all had one wonky leg or they didn't fully extend. It was really sort of just whatever we could scrap together and try to make it work is what we did. You want to move to the next slide for me? So one of the first really important pieces that we needed was a capture card. This is an upstream video capture card. This is sort of on the cheaper end. As you can see, it's only $100. But this is definitely one of the first pieces of equipment that we needed and that wasn't so readily available to us. I mean, any broadcast program is going to have a camera somewhere or a tripod, but the capture card is sort of unique in that that's what you really need to get your camera into your laptop and then streaming on YouTube or the NFHS network. We'll get into those platforms later, but this was really the first piece of equipment that we actually had to buy and sort of focus on upgrading later on as well. So as you can see, we had everything set out on the tables there and we thought it all worked great, but then come game time, things sort of changed a little bit. This was one of our first productions at the baseball field, and this was a panorama of the press box, which makes it look a lot bigger than it was. But you have 6 or 7 kids in a room that's 12 foot by 5 foot, and it gets pretty cramped, and this really shows sort of that we were using whatever we have. I mean, there's an audio cable there that's, I don't know, 150 feet, and it's actually running 6 feet across the press box from our cough boxes to our audio board, but that's just sort of all we had. We couldn't get new cables, and we just asked, and we made do with what we had.
Yeah, one of the things that's important is the misconception with live streaming is that there's a big upfront investment. And something that was important that we taught and continue to teach is that you don't need a big upfront investment. If you just have willing kids and an old laptop, you can pretty much do that. Now, this was 4 years ago. Things have changed quite a bit in 4 years just at what you're able to stream to. But you know, we say all the time when we talk to different schools is don't be bogged down by the upfront costs, because you can get online and you can get a baseball game or a football game or a pep rally live stream to your family and the friends and people inside your district at very minimal cost, just by kind of like Jacob said, collecting equipment where you can. And then it's just a matter of having kids that are willing to get in there and plug stuff in and see, you know, what works and what doesn't work.
So this was another production of ours. This was that year's track and field, the regional meet. And we sort of determined that this was going to be our big event for the year. So we brought everything we could. And I mean it. I mean, you see cardboard boxes there, grocery bags, a Pelican case we found somewhere in a closet. It really was just bring everything we have so we don't have to go back to the main campus later, and let's figure out how it works. You know, we'll get there a few hours early and let's piece everything together. That was sort of one of the things that I think was really tough for a lot of us students to learn, is that we thought, you know, we put it all together in the classroom. That means it is going to work 100% when we get there. That is not always the case. I can tell you that right now. We definitely struggled with, I mean, a lot of the time we just didn't get on air or we missed the first quarter. So it was sort of a tough transition, and it was a little bit down-putting sometimes when, you know, it worked last week and this week we missed, you know, the big touchdown in the first quarter. But eventually we sort of found our rhythm and we cut down on a lot of stuff that's here, and it made getting to events a lot easier. Now, this is sort of what an actual production ended up looking like. you can't see it in this picture, but this was that year's area wrestling meet. And those bleachers are actually folded up. We were crammed behind the teams, and there's like a 4 or 5 foot drop that we're standing on top of. And we just sort of had our stuff spread out across 20 feet of bleachers, you know, a camera sitting up here wherever we can get the shot, the audio board sitting on the bleacher in front of you, laptop on the lap. It really was just find a way to make it work at all costs, because especially when you're starting a program, and the district we were in had 10 high schools, or actually 8 at the time, I guess, it sort of made it tough that it wasn't always that somebody knew we were coming. Sometimes we just showed up and the coach was like, yeah, I mean, I guess you can set up over there. That's sort of out of the way. So it was really sort of, we had to rough it for a little bit, but it's a lot of fun too. I mean, that's where the memories are right there, sitting on top of the bleachers and the Wakeland High School gym. It's tough, but it is a lot of fun. So these were a few of the things that we actually first needed to buy after we had our initial equipment and the hand-me-downs. This is the stuff where we sat down and we went, okay, this works, but we'd be a lot better off if we maybe upgraded this or bought a newer version or an additional camera, something like that. So some of the first stuff we bought, usually the camera is what your mind goes to. You know, you already have maybe 1 camera, but you want 2 or 3 because you're watching ESPN and they have a 10 camera show or whatever. But at some point we determined that really what you need first is a switcher. That's the thing that your camera inputs go into, and that allows you to change from one camera to another camera, back to the first camera, or you can bring in a graphic. And we'll sort of get into that a little bit. There's a few options that we can talk about later on. But after the switcher, the capture card was definitely something that needs to be upgraded pretty soon too. That one we showed earlier is a pretty low range, the $85 to $99 version. At some point you get up to the $300 version, and that's sort of where we maxed out, but there's also obviously a range above that. One other thing that we struggled with early on was some form of communication. It was a lot of phone calls from one side of the gym to the other side of the gym or across the football field. Eventually we found worked best, especially at our football stadium, was walkie-talkies. But obviously if in our dream wish list we had a dedicated comm system, EarTech Wireless makes some really good stuff, but that was something that we were not able to afford at that time. So we just bought a $45 walkie-talkie pack off of Amazon or whoever our approved vendor was at the time.
Yeah, and something that is important too is, like Jacob said with the camera, especially I know a lot of our students, and if the majority of your work is that kind of on-site, go shoot, come back and edit, you kind of have to separate yourself from that mindset a little bit. The camera that you're going to take up, set up your shot, record, be able to come back and put it in post, that has to kind of set aside because this is live. What you shoot is what you get. Well, you can have multiple cameras of really any quality, but if you have no way to process those feeds coming into you and change feeds, the quality of the camera isn't going to matter as much as the angle of the shot and the type of shot that you can get. So before you spend all of your money trying to upgrade your camera, we just felt it was easier and a better investment to go after a switcher.
So this was when we first got new cameras. We were really excited about it. This was 2017 or so, and we were really proud of our brand new cameras. We have obviously the 3 little handy cams and our big handheld cam back there, which we were really proud of, until one of our students pointed out that that was actually the exact same model of camera that one of the characters on iCarly had been using 10 years before. So we definitely used whatever we could, and we just found the cheapest thing we could find because it worked. But this was really important because now we had all these cameras, we had a switcher, we were trying to do some wireless stuff for the first time. So as you can see in the back there, we sort of built a little fly pack. Obviously you can buy really nice professional versions of this, but this was just something that we put together on the campus wood shop, and we made do with what we had because we sort of had to. We couldn't afford to buy a professional fly pack, And this also allowed us to really build it to our needs. We have a custom slot there for our computer, as you can see, and then we had a few rack mounts up top. So that was actually a really good thing to have early on sort of, but it's definitely not something that's necessary.
Yeah, this was a good piece that we were able to, do the cross-curricular. It's a good buzzword if you can use on your campus, right? And we got with the tech theater people, and we're like, hey, we need a way to carry all of our stuff that's not in 9 copy paper boxes and the 3 Kroger sacks that rip every week. Like, can you help us out? And so we got in there and, painted some wood black and got it all screwed together. We did take a mobile fly case. We took some photos offline and kind of looked at some options and kind of modeled it off that, but by no means is it a pack that we would be able to afford. And now that we're 4 or 5 years into this program, it still really wouldn't be something that we would prioritize as a budget spend. This box has worked just fine. It's gotten us where we need to go. And the money that you'd spend on a big fly case like this, you could start upgrading cameras and getting into some high def video and things like that. So
that's definitely something where if we had been in a 1 or 2 school district, we probably wouldn't have prioritized it. But being in a 10 school district, or I know some of you out there are in 12, 15, 18 school districts, this is something that was really important for us because we were going all the way across the city in a school bus after the games just to get to the next field. So this is something that we really needed to do to sort of keep everything organized. So this is sort of what our ideal setup looked like. This was at a club fair at some point. As you can see, we had our camera there transmitting wirelessly. The fly pack is all set up in the back. The 2 monitors that you see mounted on the top are actually old laptops that we'd taken the bottom half off of and had mounted to the board right there. So like I said, there was a little bit of cannibalizing old products, but it worked really well. It allowed us to have a multi-view up there and a program feed. And as you can see right there, we have the audio board on the shelf, and then to the right of that is that little black box. That was our very first switcher. It was a roll-in switcher, and that was actually really good because it allowed us to take in both an HDMI feed or an SDI feed, that's sort of a good transitioning point because a lot of the stuff you'll have at the beginning, it's just going to be HDMI because that's sort of the consumer home product. But as you start upgrading, a lot of stuff will be, especially cameras, will be SDI only. So this was nice because it allowed us to have the switcher for what we currently had, and then it would allow us to upgrade our cameras and sort of still be future-proof.
Yeah, another thing that's important here is that our first 2 full years of live streaming were done in standard def, fairly low quality standard def. We decided to put a priority on getting online. Can we get online? Can we get viewers? Do people even want to watch what we have to show? And not so much of, hey, let's make sure we can do a 4K video. Because if you have 4K equipment and you can't get online, or you do get online and it's pretty choppy production value, you can lose viewers, and that can make it a little more frustrating. So it was important that early on we decided that we were going to just maintain our standard def and get hooked up with the way we could, but be online. And that seems simple until you have 20 or 30 kids all running cables and hooking stuff up, and you're trying to find the new Wi-Fi password for the venue that you're at that day. So getting online became priority number 1, which is why we also used a ton of all different hodgepodge of equipment.
One kind of funny thing to show back there, you saw the antenna on the tripod, the transmitter with the antennas. Yeah, right there, and then on the tripod next to the fly pack. But if you go to the next slide, this is what it really looked like for us. Sometimes the tripod didn't reach high enough over the crowd at a pep rally, or there wasn't enough room to put up a tripod. So we literally just taped our transmitter to the wall at our venue. There was definitely some learning curve about just trying to figure out what works and realizing that, hey, maybe the tripod works at this venue, but if we're going to this school next week, we don't need to bring the tripod because we already know that there's not enough room. If you want to go to the next slide, here you can see another case of us not having top of the line equipment. That was a rainy day at our football stadium. You can actually see we managed to get the weather map into the multi-view behind him. But we just grabbed a trash bag and cut a few holes and put that over our camera because, you know, rain gear, especially when you're having hand-me-down equipment, you might not know the model number or a few pieces are put together. So there's not actually rain gear that fits that specific build you're using. So we sort of just MacGyvered our way into weatherproof cameras, and that's what worked for that game. And, you know, it worked for us. But with new equipment always comes the sort of troubleshooting aspect of it and trying to make it work with old equipment. So here you can see we have a few new nice control boards on the desk that our fellow classmate there is standing on. But it's also still, you can see an old capture card, the same headsets we were using 2 years before sandwiched in there, and one of the TVs is just not working. Sometimes it happens. It's not always your fault. Technology is supposed to make our lives easier. That's what they always tell us. But sometimes there's a little bit of a headache involved, especially you're always the first one at a venue, and you know, you might be there 2 hours before the rest of the students get there, and you're still working on the same stupid TV 2 hours later because every cable should work. You didn't change anything from last week, but now just something isn't working right.
So one of the big learning targets that we wrote in for our curriculum here for the live production class and live production club was troubleshooting technology. And so, you know, as an instructor, one of the hard things was there were times, and Jacob can attest to this, that I didn't actually even know what was happening. You know, logically, everything was plugged in, should be working. I'm not sure. You know, everyone gets on their phones. You start opening PDFs on Google and anything you can find. So troubleshooting became a big learning target and a way to deal with that on-site stress of setting things up and getting things going. It also, from an instructor standpoint, was a great way to help reiterate how organization and teardown became really important to the success of the next week's broadcast. So that really methodical teardown, everything was labeled, packed correctly. Once we were able to move out of boxes and just taking every cable we own. So that's something that's really important, is that as you start working through this, you're going to have to be able to troubleshoot. If you're an instructor, you are going to have to some degree, accept that you may not know what's going on. And then as a student, just be willing to get in there and start messing with things. Blackmagic is a really great product because it is affordable for a school district, but it also can be reset very easily back to normal. So if you get in there and you start, you know, trying to troubleshoot and you're letting students or instructors, you know, replug things in and mess with it, they are very difficult to completely break. And you can quickly just hop into the software, reset it back to the way you got it out of the box, and you're good to go. So troubleshooting becomes a big portion of live broadcast when you're dealing with all the different types of hodgepodge equipment that you have. And then part of the troubleshooting is time. With students in Frisco, we don't get out of school until 4:15. Well, a game starts at 7. In professional industry, you're on site maybe a day before, at least 8 hours before, maybe 10 hours before. You and students are going to show up on site, and you have a couple hours to do what ESPN is doing in 3 or 4 days. So it's important to have that perspective and know that you are limited on time, and you're just at that point you're going to teach what you can teach, and hopefully get online and be successful at that portion of it.
It's definitely important to set realistic standards for yourself. And I can also say that the troubleshooting skills I learned are by far the most valuable thing I think I learned in high school. That is just something that is universally useful, and we sure got a lot of practice with it too. So here we'll get into some of the equipment that we started getting, the old and the new, as we called it. This was equipment that we sort of put together with our old equipment to sort of try to get us to the next level, but also it still had to be functional with the old stuff we were using. So our first bullet point here, absolutely our most important one, there are adapters for everything. I mean, we had audio connections that would have 3 adapters on the soundboard side and 4 on the headset side. Sometimes it's just, you know, you have to figure out what works. It might be cheaper to buy 2 adapters than it is to buy 1 new cable. So that's what we had to do. And adapters are also a little bit easier to find. Maybe your theater department has some sound adapters. The theater departments at most schools usually have pretty serious sound technology. So that was definitely a good resource for us. One point that Steven already mentioned is don't get bogged down on, you know, quality, on video quality, 4K, fiber compatibility. It's something that might seem really cool, and actually it does look very nice, but really your first priority should just be getting on air, which it does sound simple, but there's definitely some difficulties you aren't anticipating. One important thing that we sort of had to step back at some point and realize is that we are not ESPN. You know, we have kids that have been watching Monday Night Football for 10 years by the time they get into high school. So they have these big dreams and big expectations. And then it's Thursday night and we aren't on air an hour into the game. So, you know, 3 years in, we were the Ocho at best, as we say here. This was one of the first capture card upgrades we had. This was a little bit closer to the $300 range. So this is sort of where we peaked in terms of price point for our capture cards. This is called a Magewell. This is still HDMI only, but we use some converters and we were able to get our SDI equipment into an HDMI format. One of those pieces of equipment, if you want to move to the next slide for me. Oh, sorry. First, the camera is the XA10. Canon, the XA series. I'm sure a lot of you are already using that XA series. Maybe it's an XA15 or a 30 or a 35. There's a few in this range. But one important thing here to note is that this XA10 is listed there for $1,499. We did not buy that camera for $1,500. We got 1 from the broadcast program at our campus. We got 2 from the athletic department that were worn down that they've been trying to use for coaches' film. We collected as many pieces as we could and we just put it together, and these cameras did work really well for us. It's something that somebody in your district probably has or something similar to that. This was really good. It has an external focus ring and it does HDMI output, and it allows external audio recording. So this was a good piece of equipment for us to get early on. Now, this is what I was trying to get to earlier. This is an older ATEM television studio. This is what we use. They've upgraded a little bit now, so it looks a little bit sleeker. But this was really nice because it does take HDMI inputs and SDI inputs. If you look on the right side, it also outputs in HDMI and SDI. So this was good because we could sort of mix and match our equipment. You know, we might have gotten 1 nice new SDI camera, but we were still using 2 other HDMI cameras. This allowed us to put both of those into the same switcher and then bring them out in HDMI to our Magewell capture card. So this is just another picture of all the gear we had collected. This I sort of like to show because it has the really nice fly pack. We have a couple Pelican cases on the left. But then also we're still carrying around 2 cardboard boxes and a milk crate filled with power cables. The transportation of equipment was something that was just always a constant problem for us because their final product might just be 2 talent calling over a football game, but there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that you probably are already aware of, but you know, the average viewer doesn't really anticipate that. Just to get those 2 talent people talking over a football game, it's 4 Pelican cases, a fly pack, 2 cardboard boxes, and a milk crate. So this is something that we really had to focus on. You know, maybe 2 of us take the school bus with a Pelican case, somebody else brings their SUV loaded all the way up. Get there and get the equipment there however you can, kind of. This was one of our favorite pictures from our second year of doing track and field where we'd had some upgrades done. But it's also important to notice that this is a lot of different pieces sort of pushed together, you know. we do have the 3 wall-mounted TVs back there, but then you're looking at 3 laptops, an iMac we borrowed from a classroom. The iMac I actually really like to show because the iMac has a tutorial for a software that's open up on a different laptop at that point. So we did a lot of YouTubing, watching tutorials. We read all the PDFs, the instruction manuals. It was something very important, I think, for a lot of us students to learn, is that you have to find the answer yourself sometimes, because especially when you're using older equipment or a mix of older equipment, there just isn't always a textbook solution that your teacher or somebody else knows right away. Sometimes you just have to Google it and see what you can make work. So Steven, maybe you want to talk about getting district support, because that's a little bit more on the teacher side. But this was something where at some point we realized, you know, we've been using all this old equipment, we've been mixing and matching, but we sort of need a little bit of a boost at some point.
Yeah, so from this, you know, it's real important. I know you've heard the saying before, but the live, switching from pre-record to live, especially if you're going to do live mobile events and out there, is a marathon, not a sprint, for sure. It's important that you kind of start your process small, and then over time you're able to kind of show what you have there. We always said, kind of show your value, you know, don't defend it. So you know, you won't have to go in and just, you know, dispute yourself to anyone. You can just naturally show that you have created value. We learned over the years, most school districts really have a few core goals that a broadcast program can actually contribute to right now, face value. That is promotion of district activities, which most districts have a communication department, but when a student program can promote district activities, that is always an extra push. It is a great way for your students to get some real world experience and have that there. And from a district level, that's what we're here for. We're here for the kids, and we're here for them to get involved and be part of the process and the program. And so the student involvement is always there. So if you can put those two things at the forefront when you switch over to live broadcasting, or if you're already live broadcasting and you're looking to kind of step it up to the next level, keep those two things in mind. What can you do to promote district activities, whether that's athletics or fine arts or any of the academic clubs or things like that? And then, are you doing the best for student involvement? Are you providing as much student opportunity as possible? And if you are, you're going to be able to prove that value. Okay, so you can do these productions with little money is important, and little money in our industry is a really important term, because as most of you know, from at least on the teacher side, when you go to an admin or a principal and say, look, I really need a camera, I need one more camera, and they say, okay, yeah, that's great, and you say, it's $5,000, and then they shut the door and giggle on their way out, right? So it's always been a struggle to help district administrators understand how expensive our technology is, but that it's worth it and we can use that. So the little money is important, because little money is relative to our industry, not so much little money as in just a few dollars. So we were able to go 3 years. We had over 100 kids in the program. We were live broadcasting anything that they would let us walk in the doors on, and that our district kind of stepped in at that point and was able to provide us with some things. The kids here at Frisco had a unique opportunity because we are partnered with Dallas Cowboys, and so we got to do football games from the Ford Center, and the kids' production value allowed for this. The kids in this photo, they were doing this with the cardboard boxes. Now it just looks really cool because they have the nice little stand-up desk. So their involvement and their passion didn't change. It was just we got to add some things and kind of upgrade. So this was over the course of 3 years, 4 years, 3.5 years. that you actually finally get that district involvement. But it was a labor of love, and it made, we put in the time and the effort and streamed as many things as we could to kind of show that value. Once we got to this, there's always the next thing that you want to solve. This is a quick photo. The kids needed the next challenge, and so they wanted to do a remote broadcast. How can you do, anchors in the studio at one venue and on field at another venue? In one of our club sessions, the kids literally just sat on the whiteboard and put every piece of equipment we had and started drawing how things would connect and what that looks like. And there was no assignment on this. There was no demand for this. No one was asking for this. It was just something the kids wanted to challenge themselves to figure out. And I ended up using that the following year as just kind of a brain break, for my upper level kids. Hey, here's this problem. How would you go about solving it? And the next year's picture ended up looking totally different than this group of kids' solution for it. So if you let our kids are so technology heavy right now, if you give them a little bit of leeway to go solve something, you'll be shocked what random solutions that they come up with your hodgepodge group of equipment. So that was kind of the story, and Jacob's process of getting there and kind of showing you, we started really with nothing and went from there. Some of you already have fully built out and established sets and studios and equipment and things like that, and maybe you're just not out doing live stuff yet. So it was important that we kind of talked through the options and the things that would allow you to take the equipment that you have, build some go bags, and get out and film. Hopefully sports is back in August, but if there's a scenario where it is sporting events and athletic events with no fans, you can put yourself in a really prime position to get those events out to the public, to your district people, parents, family, things like that. If there are fans in the stands, there's always a grandma in Ohio or another state that wants to see someone perform or play, and that's a great thing to do as well. We found our second year, we would have more viewers during the halftime show of football games than the actual football game, because fine arts, band, cheer, drill parents were way more enthusiastic about sharing our stream information and getting that out there. So we started making it a point. I was like, if we don't get the first quarter in, I'm not worried about it, but we have to be on air for halftime, because that's when everyone's going to be there, ready to watch the band. So you make some adjustments that you're not prepared for, but you'll be able to get the viewers. So the first one that's the most common is YouTube Live, and just streaming right to YouTube. We use YouTube now as our archiving system. So we send to the platform that we stream, and then we send a second copy to YouTube just to archive. So what you see here, you can see there's no views because they're unlisted, private, and it's just an archive stream, which allowed the kids to go back in on Monday or Tuesday or whatever day we got back in, pull that down from YouTube, cut it apart, and make a highlight video. And now we weren't taking SSDs and pulling them out of the hyperdeck and doing all this crazy transition of footage. We had a hard copy on YouTube, unlisted. They downloaded the video, put it in Premiere, we're in Adobe District, and cut it apart, make a highlight video, and good to go. It also helped by the time we were into year 4, year 5 now, they'll be able to say, hey, remember when Jay Ajayi scored that touchdown and went for 99 yards? Remember what game that was? Oh yeah, we have it here. Boom, let's cut it apart, and now it's in our game footage. So, like I said, marathon, not a sprint. So YouTube, you can stream live, and that's a great place to start. We use it as an archive place to put things. The caveat to YouTube is if you go live and make this public instead of unlisted, if you are bringing in any audio that falls under the copyright, they will stop your stream. Now, sometimes they stop your stream completely. Sometimes they just kill your audio. So your video gets to keep going, but your audio is gone completely. And then after the fact, you can go back and dispute it. The district that we're at uses Neptune Sports as the DJ for all the venues. The district pays for that program. It plays segments of popular songs, top 100 songs. Those rights don't translate into our live stream rights. So when that song's played on Neptune in the stadium, and we're taking a stadium audio feed, we immediately are cut on YouTube. So just kind of the one caveat of streaming to YouTube there.
One other one that you might not anticipate is the national anthem. That is one
Yes.
we missed, and that's one that they always copyrighted us for. You just don't think about it when it's playing.
Yeah, if your venue plays a canned national anthem, a pre-recorded national anthem, we found we would just mute our audio board, let the flag and the camera shots go, and then as soon as the national anthem was over, we queued up our audio and our on-air kids went live, because the national anthem stopping your stream before the game starts is a real blow to your confidence when you finally are on air for the national anthem in the first place. So that is that's something to think about when you use YouTube. So the next option, the YouTube option, you can go straight from your laptop with the capture card and be ready to go. You don't need anything else. You can run it straight like you run it there. This is vMix, just a screenshot of vMix, and we found that this was our best program to incorporate graphics and everything else. Now we had a switcher on upstream of this, so we were putting whatever our switcher feed had, but you can use this the same way. There's a free version. It gives you 1 camera input and 2 graphic input. Great way to start. The next step up is $100, one-time purchase, and it gives you 5 cameras and 100 inputs and 100 graphics. So it gets very robust quickly. So vMix is a good place to start, super easy to use. And vMix is the one that allows you to send one feed to one place and the other feed to the YouTube, and you can send up to 3 streams to 3 different places. And that's all in the free version. So vMix is a really great resource if you're not already using it. The vMix is not available on Mac right now. That's kind of the one kicker. It is PC only at the moment. You can obviously make it work on a Mac if you are really technology savvy and want to do a Windows boot, but the PC is its main version there.
One thing to think about with vMix as well is that while it might be nice to have the 5 camera inputs available, it can also be pretty difficult to get 5 cameras into a laptop or a computer. So that's just something to also consider when you're building out your technology list there.
So when we started with the NFHS network. This is an amazing platform to start your live stream with. 2 reasons. 1, it's free for you and your school district to get on here and start streaming. You can start right now. The next part is they pay you to stream. They will pay you, and you can create revenue off of NFHS Network, and I'll go into that detail in just a second. NFHS Network also provides you their version of vMix, and it's the network producer. It is very intuitive for a student. It has score bugs. It makes it very easy to change things. It's a 1 input situation. It connects directly to their server, so you can be live immediately. It's very intuitive for both teacher and student. But it does have some limitations once you get into really doing the high def, with the switcher and all those things. That's their producer software. We still stream to NFHS Network. We just do it through vMix. So NFHS Network is a great resource to start, and you can get set up and start streaming right away, free of cost to you. This is the best screenshot that we could find of the NFHS producer. It is not your computer. It's not the network speed. This is just a blurry picture, but it's the blanks here are score, visitor name, team name, and your stream is in the big blue window, and it's ready to go. You hit start stream, and you're live on the NFHS network. So NFHS is a good way to start. The way that you get paid, we'll go into here in just a second. But if you don't have a place to put anything, NFHS is a good way. lastly is mascot media. Mascot media would be tied in with your athletic department, so good cross-curricular, right? Good buzzword there. And they have a lot to offer from the athletic department side, but they do have a lot to offer for our side on broadcasting. So if your athletic department isn't 100% on board or not sure about it yet, you can still hop on here. There is some revenue options with mascot media, but the only thing that you'll want to make sure that you cover if you go with mascot media is they own the rights to sell ads. So you want to make sure that your district's communication office and you guys know what ads are going on there. You do, as a school broadcast program and as a district, have first right of refusal. So if you have a deal in your district with Metter Chrysler, you can make sure that no other type of things get played on there. They're really amazing to work with. They're out of Fayetteville, Arkansas. This is the same thing, works on vMix and shoots right there. The really nice thing about Mascot Media is their servers support 1080 video streaming. So now most people will not watch video over 720, and I don't want to get in the weeds on the tech there, but they do support the high def streaming capacity no matter what. They will not archive for you, so that's why we use YouTube to archive. NFHS will archive for you if you'd like them to keep your videos on there. So Mascot Media, kind of the good place to get, especially at a district level, get Mascot Media involved for your streaming there. Okay, so kind of to wrap up here, why should you live stream? We kind of gave you our story, gave you some options, and we've said a few. So the first one, in my opinion, is that real world experience for students. If for those of you that have been in the industry and or teaching it in the classroom, it's really hard to teach a switcher or a replay system or something in a large group of kids. You have one kid standing over your shoulder, or you're standing over their shoulder, and there's kind of a process to that learned experience. So the real world experience is great. Jacob mentioned the troubleshooting, might have been the best thing that he learned, and that's really important. Future ready learners, that this puts someone in the driver's seat for what they want to do. Jacob was able to walk into the production room at Oklahoma State, say, I have experience, here's the stuff I've used, and they were like, can you start tomorrow? So they were ready to have him on as soon as possible. And then, like I mentioned before, the promotion of district and campus events and the culture. So those are three really great reasons. But a great reason for you and your program, as I'm sure all of you have dealt with, is what the budget item looks like year to year for your program. So it's a great revenue opportunity where you get to put that money back into your broadcast program. NFHS Network is $10 a month is what someone pays a subscription to view anything on their website. NFHS gives you 50% of that subscription, and then they write you a check every quarter. So 4 times a year, you'll get a check from NFHS Network that is 50% of all subscriptions to your school or district. And that is a great way to upgrade your camera and upgrade your switcher and do that. And you don't have to go out and sell advertising and get into kind of the weeds of, really putting advertisements out onto your broadcast. If that's something that you already are doing or your district is comfortable with doing, obviously that's a good revenue stream. This is a great way to build revenue for your program specifically and do it in a way that is all about your kids getting on air, producing content for the district, producing content for the campus, and showing off everything that your district and campus are tackling here. This is Ty Dolla $ign if you weren't sure. So just when Ty Dolla $ign, revenue streaming opportunities, very important correlation there. And this is a big motivator when you start out like us and you don't have a budget code, you don't have any funds or anything. So a check every 3 months from NFHS is like Christmas when it shows up, and you can buy yourself a new capture card or a new lens for a camera or something that normally may not get approved through the standard budget process. These are our officers last year. I'm gonna let Jacob take over from there.
This was actually a really cool opportunity we had. Monday Night Football was at the AT&T Center in Arlington for the Dallas Cowboys game, and we're pretty close by. It was about an hour drive, and we knew some people that worked with the production company that owns the broadcast trucks that go to these games. So we had an opportunity for us officers to go down and tour these trucks, and that, I think, was really interesting for us to see, first off, because, I mean, I don't know if it was Fox Sports or ESPN, but they had 6 full broadcast trucks in the bowels of AT&T Stadium and 2 more 50-foot 18-wheelers just to transport cables and tripods and lenses and cameras and all that stuff. So it was very interesting to see, first off, that they were here 4 days before the game. That was something I think gave us a little bit, that sort of boosted our confidence, because we were able to see, you know, this isn't too far off. We're doing the basic level of what they're doing, but we do it in the 3 hours before kickoff, where they're here 3 days before. But it was also really good for us to sort of take a step back and see, okay, we need to be a little bit more realistic here. These guys have 6 broadcast trucks and 250 people, and we're trying to be them. We can't do that with a shoestring budget and, you know, this week this kid's here, but next week he's at the orchestra concert. We have a very fluctuating crew, and some days we might have 20 people. The next week it might be 6 people. So it was really good for us to put in perspective that, you know, we need to sort of check ourselves and realize what we can actually be doing. So one of the things we sort of focused on, this is later, me, Steven, and as Eric mentioned, Liz Wigglesworth. One of the things we always struggled with was teaching new students the hardware, because it's the only time that you can really teach it is during a game. And if it's the middle of a football game, you don't want to put the freshman on the control board and say, you know, just mash the buttons and learn, because especially later on, you might have advertisements that you need to hit, or officials might be watching to determine next year's budget. So if you have a freshman, they're going to mess up, which is okay. That's part of the learning, but you don't want them to miss the advertisement and that sponsor is there at that point. So we sort of came up with this solution. We're calling it SWITCHERSIM. So Steven, if you want to introduce it here.
Yeah, so we want to be able to take your questions about live streaming and stuff. We'll gladly stay here to the end and talk about the software that we've built to help teach this. We have everything on our website. We built out a full lesson simulations. It puts kids right in the driver's seat to tackle everything, learn it at the base level. We go over all the terminology and things like that. We also have a special offer for STN members right now. It's on the website. We're giving you the 5 simulations for free right now. We weren't going to roll this out till August, but we want to give it to you free now for the e-learning. We know we're all struggling through e-learning. And you can get signed up, get your kids in it. We already have a handful of STN STN schools, that are in and using it. We're also taking your feedback. This is a beta version, so we, like I said, aren't planning to roll it out till August. So if you'd like to stay, talk about the software we have to offer you guys, we'd love to do that. But I know that we'd also like to be able to answer any questions about the live streaming and the steps that we went through and stuff we learned.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Steven and Jacob. Quite a bit to take on there, and we definitely have, I'm sure, some people that will have questions. Just so we can start to populate some of the questions, if you're interested in asking a question, the raise your hand feature, if you're looking at the Zoom at the bottom, this is something we didn't talk about before, but you'll find the participants tab. If you click on that, then the participants tab will come on, and then on the bottom lower right area of that window, you'll find the raise your hand feature. So if you're interested in asking a question, we will use that feature and unmute you as time permits. Wow. So let me just, as we are waiting for some of the questions to come in, I have a couple things that I'd like to actually just kind of maybe start the discussion with. And, you know, you guys talked about the opportunity for the freshmen to come on and everybody wants to be the technical director, right? That's where the helm, you're at the helm, you're in control of everything. And I think about the 16-year-old kid that takes the car wheel for the first time after driver's ed. That's what I'm thinking of, right? That's, you're giving the kid the opportunity to really just jump in. And what a great opportunity this your program here with Broadcast Sims may be for some of the teachers that want to give a little bit of control, but not necessarily the whole thing. So lots to talk about here. And I'm sure many of us we do have some questions already. As you're talking about it, I'm thinking about what, you're right, with a lot of the equipment that we're trying to put together, it is just it's messy, right? We're all trying to piece together things, I think, you guys said it, like we're all on, I think Jacob, you said it, you were on a shoestring budget. What piece can I actually get next? And that was just so true. I'm sitting, I'm like, you said there's adapters for everything. And I'm like, yeah, these go through the wash. These are in my pants pocket all the time as, a broadcast teacher. I'm always trying to put the stuff together, and, there's adapters for everything. So cool. I think one of the questions that I wrote down a bunch of them. You were talking about the black magic and that stuff. There was like the idea of format. I found like one of the problems with black magic design is that, okay, you have to choose, you can go HDMI, you can go SDI, but the format, once you choose 1080p, you have to stay with 1080p. Doesn't matter what one camera is or the other. They all have to come in at 1080p, the same format. One can't be 4K, one can't be 720. They all have to stay the same when you're using Blackmagic Design. And you guys talked about so many different things, but you brought it back to when you are running a switcher, it looks the same, especially with your software. And it's the idea of preview program, the idea of ins and outs, and having all the different sources. And I think that's what tied it all together. Love the reference, by the way, to the Ocho. I'm a big dodgeball movie fan, so love it. Let's go to this to some of the questions here. Again, if you would like to ask a question, use the raise your hand feature found on the participants tab. So we're going to go to Stu Stein. Stu, you're unmuted. Where are you from, Stu?
I'm from Belmore Merrick Broadcasting in Long Island.
Awesome.
And it's kind of funny. We are actually, I think we're the same age as you guys. We're in our 4th year live streaming, and I was texting with our studio manager while I was watching, and it was like reliving nightmares from the last 4 years. But one thing that you said, I'm not sure if it was Jacob or Steven, but one of you guys mentioned that you teach troubleshooting in the classes or when you're not broadcasting. Do you have any tips for that? Because that's, everything you described is what we go through. That, there's days that the first quarter, we're lucky to get it on. How do you teach troubleshooting when you're not actually troubleshooting?
So one thing that I sort of like to focus on is just breaking it down. So let's say you have your camera set up. Your camera is not turning on. Our usual setup was a power strip plugged into a wall outlet, and then the power supply running from the power strip to the camera. You break that down, there's 4, if the camera's not turning on, say, there's 4 possible failure points there, right? The camera, the power supply, the power strip, or the wall outlet. So if the camera's not turning on, it's sort of important. I like to just test each component individually. Maybe the first step is bypassing the power strip. So you put the power supply straight into the wall. The camera still doesn't turn on, then we know that it's obviously not the power strip. If it had turned on, then the power strip was the problem. So maybe the next step is stealing a power supply from a different camera. If that power supply turns on the camera, then you know that the problem is with your power supply. If you've tried everything, if you've tried a different wall outlet, maybe the problem's the camera. That's not what you want to hear, but you can also, another important part is to just check the cables. With transporting stuff here and there in boxes, sometimes cables get, bent too tight or knotted up, or they have a rip in them. So cable problems are probably where we had our most amount of issues, just bad handling of cables. That's another important thing to teach students, is just the over-under method. That's the first thing any professional job is going to ask you about. How do you wrap your cable? Because that really is just the most important part with handling cables and transporting and stuff.
Yeah, and from the teacher side, I liked setting. Now this was a growth process. This was not my day one by any means, but now it's that setting the expectation of, yes, we have a time, we have a deadline, we need to get on air, but ultimately it is about having those kids critically think about why something's not working. And Jacob kind of used the simple method of the power supply. But like Eric was mentioning, Blackmagic just has the wrench that they throw into the format that you're outputting. So you get the camera, and then all of a sudden that one little menu button on the camera, you no longer have connectivity. So there are things like that. Now in year 4 or 5, those are things that I can simulate in a lab. I can set up a little switcher. I can change the menu option to 720p. Well, they see the camera on, it's working, SDI cable's good, follow it down, plugged into the switcher, that's good. And then they sit there and head scratch, I don't know. And so it's like, okay, walk through your process. What's the deal here? What are you thinking? And 9 times out of 10, some kid pops off and says, you think someone messed with the menu? And of course you get to, smirk underneath your kind of hat and hide there. And I don't know, let's check. So you can simulate some of those things. But I always wanted to make sure that students know that if there's not a problem, a lot of times someone else has already had that problem, and Google is an amazing resource, and you can Google almost any problem, and it comes up with a few basic solutions for troubleshooting. But it was important that expectation was work the problem yourself, and get through those steps. Don't come to me and say, oh, camera's not working, and then sit down like that. That doesn't help us get on air. Like I don't know what to tell you. You have 14 minutes and we have a live shot here coming. So I just think it was important that was the case. I know personally early on, I put on a lot of undue stress. Like, I need to get on air. Someone's counting on me to be on air, until I realized no one's really counting on you to be on air. Like, they would like you to be on air. That would be ideal if you're on air, but it's your job to teach those students how to do the process, how to get set up, and how to do equipment and things like that. And if part of the learning is to not be on air on time, now in your debrief, you get to walk through why you weren't on air on time. And cable wrapping became this like staple of your day-to-day life of, here, wrap this cable, and oh, you did that wrong? I'm going to unwrap it and you're going to wrap it again. And it felt very military-ish after a while, but at some point it's like, this cable not being wrapped prevented us from having a talent shot to open the game time. And I know that's tough, but that's also part of that real world application as well. So there are some that you can simulate, and sometimes technology is just going to pick on you for no reason, and you're just going to all be on the fly. And that's why I said earlier, it's important that I was troubleshooting just as much as they were sometimes, to go as we moved along.
It's interesting the way that you had brought it up earlier, Steven, is you said about giving the kids a little bit of access to technology, let them explore. It's like giving them a leash and give them a little bit of slack, let them explore. I think a lot of times you're going to find the kids are going to rise to that occasion too. The idea of time, though, is definitely a critical part of it too. Did they answer your question there, Stu?
Yeah, if I just a quick follow, how many times a month are you broadcasting live?
So during football season, we broadcast every Thursday and Friday night from 2 venues. And then during non-football, we broadcast every Tuesday and Friday. We'll do a basketball or a baseball or a soccer or something flipped around that. So that's not how it was early on. That's important. We are pushing out quite a bit of content now finally. So
that's also something that was important to sort of step back when we toured those broadcast trucks at the AT&T Stadium. We realized that we were overextending ourselves a lot. I mean, there were weeks we had a volleyball game Tuesday, a football game Thursday, a football game Friday, and then the next week it was the same thing again. And when you get into the spring, you have a few more special events, track and field. Maybe you're doing the regional or the area meet, or the same for wrestling. So it's important to really build those calendars as far out as you can, because that also helps with student scheduling. You know, some students have a lot of other commitments, band or orchestra, or we even have students that sometimes care about their grades too. So it's important to schedule that out ahead, I think.
Yeah. I think most of the people here that are online are teachers and trying to figure out where their program fits into what you guys are talking about. As you guys were going through your slideshow, you were showing lots of different pictures of where you started, where you kind of crept up to. And I think that's kind of important because, you know, as you're doing that, I'm saying, yeah, well, no, we're a little bit past that. We're not quite there. And I do think that it's important to know that this is, there is a curve here. It's over time. It doesn't happen like that unless you're given, you know, $1 million to just play with. It happens piece by piece, and you make small advances as time goes on.
And if you do have all that equipment, you may not have it. You may not be able to have the kid workforce to use it yet. So it's a great way to get that learned up. And, you know, that's something that we want to do with our software. Was like, if let's say you do have all this access to equipment, how can we expedite your learning process so you can do multiple events on a single night if you're ready for that, you know?
Right. Your pictures were spot on. I thought they're really realistic. Even I did see a soda cup on the console. I was going, no, don't do that. Let's go to some more of the questions. Thank you, Stu. Let's go to Thomas Wolverton. Thomas, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead.
Thank you, guys. I got into the session a little bit late. Is there, are you recording this? Will we be able to reference it going backwards? Because what I did see and hear was fantastic and to the point. But is there going to be anything available after this?
Yeah, I'll take that question, Thomas. Yes, it's going to be on the STN website. So if you go, actually, and we've just revamped our website. If you look at the STN website, if you go to the tab up top, go to resources, under the video vault, you have to be logged in on your dashboard. But if you go to the video vault, you'll find there's all these different webinars that we're doing. You'll find them in there. And so this will be available for all our affiliates right there on our website. Does that answer your question?
I think we'll share with Eric the slideshow too, if you want to pick back through some of the equipment we showed and pictures and things. So.
That would be great, Steve. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And it'll also be on our YouTube channel.
Thanks,
Beautiful.
Nancy. Appreciate it.
That's it.
Thank you. All right, let's go to Miles Fessler. Go ahead, Miles.
Hey, so my question was, do you guys have any recommendations for starting off with telestration?
So for what are you doing now? I know I hate to follow you back up with a question, but how far, like, are you already streaming and you have equipment, or is this just?
Yeah, we've been streaming for a few years. We have a pretty good 3-camera setup with a TriCaster, and we kind of wanted to kind of do something that's really cool moving forward, kind of the setup for next year. So we were kind of thinking telestration would be really cool.
Are you talking about telestration for like a replay where you can have your on-air or color?
Yeah, exactly.
So I know that NewTek that'll work with your TriCaster. One of the higher-end NewTek replay systems, I think it's the 425 maybe, that allows telestration. So NewTek, especially if you're already in their sort of environment, that would be a good place to start. Other than that, I'm sure somewhere else maybe you can find a cheaper alternative, but that would be at least a place to start looking.
Okay, yeah. So right now we do have a replay system that we use through a company in Carlsbad called Graphics Outfitters. We kind of collaborated with them, and they hooked us up with a really cool replay system. Do you know of any third-party boxes that you could use as telestration?
No, we never got to that level, unfortunately.
Okay.
Hopefully someday.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's important. I think as we're looking at this, we're always looking to find what's the next best piece of equipment that I can attain to kind of up my game on this. You know, what could make this? What could because the technology, the kids love the technology, right? That's kind of like the carrot. It's like, oh well, we can do instant replay. Oh well, we can do these amazing cool graphics. We have our playback system. all those things can kind of like tie in and make your program a little better. So that's what I was looking for in a lot of the pictures. Oh yeah, I can add that. That would make it really cool. But let's go.
And one thing that we learned too along the process was your kids change every year. So you may be on air heavy this year, maybe tech heavy next year, maybe. And so it's like, you want to be able to get equipment that facilitates whatever version of kids you get that, coming that change through every year. And that was also what really drove our decision making when we bought new equipment was, okay, if I'm really on air heavy next year and I have a lot of talent type kids, do I have the right equipment that I can start bringing up the freshman kiddos and things like that? And that was important too to help make decisions for us.
All right. I think, is there a way to access, I mean, do you guys have a list of things? I think because this is a common question that we get on the listserv all the time. Like, what do I need for a studio production? Well, the studio, are you live in the field? I think everybody's looking at all sorts of different equipment. What is the best thing for any given venue? It may differ, but you guys started going through the list of switcher. You need communication, which is like, I think sometimes it's even more important because you got to be talking to each other or else you're all over the place. And, do you have a list of some sort of equipment that high school or even middle school teachers could use just to reference, say, oh yeah, that's cool. Maybe this is priority 7, but right now my biggest priority is this. I don't know if that's something that you guys might have.
Yeah, we have a whole list of equipment. We have a wish list also of things that we would immediately upgrade to, and things like that. We actually, when we were building out this, was do we want to show equipment or do we want to show how we've just been using stuff? And so we decided to go the latter and show how we used what we had as opposed to the list of things. But we do have a list of things. Jacob and I have a list that's probably different than even what we're using in Frisco, of just things that after we've been using equipment, using things, we would change and alter and stuff. So that's something that we gladly provide for you. We have it Google, and that makes it quick and easy. So
there's also
the capture cards big time too. Capture cards really important. That can be it's hard to invest in a good capture card because it feels unimportant and you don't get to use it and there's no like visceral part to it, but it's very important to get you from what you're producing to sending it somewhere.
There's also some good resources online. I know the NFHS network we mentioned earlier, they have a few PDFs you can download. Like the very first one is at the lowest price point, and then they have 2 or 3 more that's mid-range and then high-range price point, and they list out a few specific items. There's some great people on YouTube. There's a guy in Utah named Doug Johnson Productions. If you've done any Googling about this, you've probably come across him at some point. But there's also definitely places online you can look and see, especially here if you're an STN affiliate, you can sort of see what similar programs are doing too.
I know one of our sponsors for STN, ESE Networks, has also been a big. Some of the guys there have helped me quite a bit with putting together my studio. They're tremendously big hands. All right, I don't see any more questions at this time, so I'd like to just start again by thanking Steve. Unless, do you guys have something you want to add before we close out?
No, like I said, if you want to get with us on the software, we'd love to. What little bit of e-learning I think we're going to be tackling here in the next few weeks. Love to get you guys on board, have your kids try it out. Should help you with any e-learning, and then in August we'll have the full package ready to go with the SWITCHERSIM, and then each year we're going to go add on the instant replay simulator, the Chiron simulator, and then the multiplayer simulator where you can kind of tackle them all together in a lab setting. Really just wanted to be able to teach all the kids at once without having to pull them one by one into a studio space and stand over their shoulder, or they stand over your shoulder, and just kind of be able to give them all that experience. And they can pace it themselves, which is important. And then like Eric mentioned, you hate to give the freshman kid the switcher at the big football studio because it's all you got. You'd much rather have them mess up the simulation, and you can give them some learning objectives to go tackle.
Yeah, and your website, so that everybody knows, for Broadcast Sims, what is it?
It's broadcastsims.com. And then there's a link also with this webinar flyer that takes you to the STN special package that we have here, the free 5 simulations with all the assessments and everything as well. So
Great. Well, Steven, Jacob, I want to thank you guys for taking your afternoon and spending it with us to talk to us a little bit about live production and streaming for school broadcasts. It's sometimes it's a lot of troubleshooting, like you said, and sometimes we feel like we're our own islands, we're in the dark, and we got to really figure this out on our own. So it's nice to have people like you that will help us through some of these situations. We really appreciate your assistance this afternoon. I'd like to thank Nick and Nancy for putting this session together. I just want to let you know about some of the upcoming webinars that we have coming up. We have a teacher talk this Thursday. We're going to be talking about virtual graduation and what that looks like. So if you have an idea about what your district might be doing, come join us at the table, talk to us a little bit about that. Or if you're just interested in hearing what other people are doing, come in as well. You'll find it on the listserv, the times for that. That's this Thursday. Starts at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Next Tuesday, we have a session that's sponsored by Savannah College of Art and Design. It's on casting and directing talent with Quinlan O'Rear. He's the SCAD, the SCAD, throw too many acronyms at the Savannah College of Art and Design, Associate Chair of Film and Television. That's going to be on Tuesday, May 12th. The whole session is focusing on the film and TV director's process. Students will learn best practice in auditioning and working with actors through interactive activities, and that's Tuesday. So invite your students and definitely teachers as well. We appreciate all of you that have come out to join us for this series this afternoon. Thank you. This is going to wrap up our session. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and enjoy the afternoon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Eric.